This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
And welcome to the latest, the freshest edition of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company. I am your host, Vito Chirco, alongside my usual sidekick and partner in crime. That is the Doc from Doc and Jock, John Charles Macaroon.
We have new rules on the network. You are no longer allowed to text me directly. You got to go through my assistant. Unfortunately, you got to go through the chain of command because I'm going to be an A&E superstar, baby. You got this.
How about that? That'll be really cool for you. Now, you record when this week, Doc? Tell all of our listeners about that opportunity and when you do indeed record.
I'm so excited that someone cast me. Now, do I get edited out? Whatever's going to happen with the project? Listen to the Motor City Sports Rant that we did earlier this week. I'll have more. We'll tease it out. Because this is the Tigers Talk podcast. I want to give you a chance because you and I are both angry about the Detroit Tigers. I don't want to hog up the entire podcast about me. But in essence, it's about the Detroit Lions and getting them to be a much better organization. And the Doc will do anything to help out the organization. And you might be part of it as well. Being a friend of the podcast, I'm going to give you some instructions as well on how to be part of the filming as well.
Well, thank you for the opportunity. You know, I'm glad that you're able and willing to grace me with that opportunity, as you don't grace me with all the opportunities in the world that I feel that I am worthy of at times. But that's a story for another day. Now, another reason to be a little bit salty right now is the Tigers' lackluster bullpen performance over the weekend against the Oakland A's in Oakland, against a ball club right now that is not a very good ball club in Oakland. And to lose 2 out of 3 in the style that they did was not very sexy, was very bad for the ball club, and really a reason to not feel overly optimistic about the team's chances going forward this season 2, Doc.
Look, Vito, a lot of people are pissed off with this bullpen. It came to a head on Sunday, and obviously a lot of people have talked about it since then, but I think you and I are going to get into the possible solutions. But to recap it, I'm more frustrated with Brad Ausmus for putting K-Rod in that situation. He should have known that K-Rod was not ready to perform on Sunday. It should have been something that was known, was obvious. That's what a manager does. But I do want to bring up a subject that Jason brought up. It sounds far-fetched, but if you think about it logically, it could also have some merit. Would you give any thought to the notion that Brad Ausmus threw K-Rod out there kind of knowing that he would stink it up to send home a message directly to the organization that this guy's not my closer? Jason brought it up on the Motor City Sports Rant and said, look, Brad Ausmus can't publicly say K-Rod sucks. He can't just come out there and when the microphones are stuck in his face be like, I don't trust this guy. Maybe you just go out there and you say, look, I'm going to throw him out there where it could be win-win, where if K-Rod gets the save, you can kind of hold off the fire for another day. But if he sucks in the manner in which he blew on Sunday, now the entire world, Twitter, the podcasters, the sports talk hosts, the fan base is now looking at K-Rod and said, see ya, we don't want you anymore. Do you think there is a little bit of sinister in Brad Ausmus that he did this on purpose?
Well, you're saying that it directly sent a message right to the front office of the Tigers, that their bullpen is crappy, K-Rod's not the man to be the closer. That's what you're saying. That's what Jason Jarvie said, huh, on the Motor City Sports Rant podcast?
We were speculating and talking that maybe it wasn't, because I was so upset regarding Brad Ausmus and the decision. He said, well, maybe he did it on purpose so that if he would fail, that he could obviously no longer have to go to him. But we're still going to see who's going to be the closer. It hasn't been announced yet at the time of this recording who the closer is in the series versus Arizona. But if it's not K-Rod, there may be a little bit of backhandedness with Brad Ausmus. But to me, what I think that Brad Ausmus is not competent, and he made a really bad choice, and he lit the fire and caused this issue to erupt due to the fact that he put K-Rod in a situation on Sunday he didn't need to be in.
Back-to-back days using him when he blew the save on Saturday night. They should have won the series. They could have swept the series, realistically. And I think if any message if it sent any message at all, Doc, it sent the clear-cut message that Brett Ausmus is a dumbass. Think about it. It wasn't a message to the front office and to Avila not structuring the bullpen in the right manner in the offseason, because he didn't. And he put Ausmus in a bad situation to start the season with a lackluster bullpen, especially at the back end of games, with K-Rod as your closer, a guy that's not sufficient enough to be the closer at this stage in his career, and a guy that shouldn't truly be used right now, at least in high-leverage situations. And then back-to-back days, it was a clear-cut message that Brett Ausmus isn't equipped for the managerial job of the Detroit Tigers, because I think to any average Joe out there, fair weather fan of the Tigers, Doc, it was clear that Ausmus should not have utilized K-Rod 2 games in a row over the weekend when he blew that save Saturday night. And think about the other games he had blown already up to that point leading into Saturday night as well against the A's. So he had proven this season up to this point, going into the A's series, that he really hasn't been a very capable closer. He's nowhere near a lights-out closer, and he's nowhere near the guy that they need in the 9th inning, a guy that is much more sufficient than K-Rod has been up to this point. And him lacking the stuff, and knowing that he lacked the stuff coming into the season as well in terms of the full arsenal, which Jim Price says on the radio broadcast all the time, well, knowing that, the Tigers should have addressed the bullpen. And that's where it goes to Al Avila, and that's where, Ausmus has been dealt a very poor hand, but it was on Ausmus, specifically on Sunday, because he should have already been made well aware of the fact that K-Rod was not the guy to use in the 9th inning on Sunday. So for me, it's less about Al Avila in the front office and more about Brett Ausmus stupidly utilizing K-Rod in the 9th inning to close out the game on Sunday when he should not have done so.
Vito, it's just a tough thing because I think the fans have gotten to the point where they're fed up. They no longer want to look at the bullpen and be discussing how awful they are. They know that this ball club offensively is doing great things. Look at the run production in the last 7 games. It's been okay. You had a game where you dropped 19 runs on a team. But the bullpen is causing this team to suffer again, and the fans can't take it anymore. We all have not yet recovered from 2013 when we had a 1-0 lead in Boston, and you blew, I think, what was it, a 6-2 lead or 6-3 lead, and you give up a grand slam? The bullpen. We are not healed from that. I'm not healed from that. We were recording these podcasts at the time, me and Adam. I'm not healed from that. I still sting because you could have came home up 2-0. Vito, it hurts because it's a part of a team that's been dysfunctional now for the better part of a decade.
Way too long where the bullpen has been lackluster, you're right, but it's about this season specifically and the lackluster back end of the pen, which, once again, Brett Ausmus dealt a very poor hand. And there's a few choice words you could use to describe the Tigers' back end of the pen and K-Rod right now and his lack of effectiveness, big time, as he has proven time in and time out this season, time and time again, that he is not good enough to be the closer right now. And specifically, it's not even about having a designated closer, as I've harped on many times throughout the episodes of this very podcast, Doc. It's more about the fact that K-Rod has proven at this stage in his career, at this advanced stage in his career, he is not good enough at this point, or anymore, to be used as a high-leverage relief pitcher in the situation of a 1 or 2 run ball game or a tied ball game, when the game is close in reach for the opponent. When it is, you know what? K-Rod has proven this season he should not be utilized by Brett Ausmus. And I know you don't want to blow up the arms of Justin Wilson and Alex Wilson, but Shane Green has pitched a little bit better of late, and I think you have to rely upon the mixture or combination of the trio of arms I just mentioned, Shane Green even, plus the Wilson duo, which are very capable relief pitchers at this point to be used in high-leverage situations. So those 2 guys and Shane Green, you have to kind of rely upon mixing and matching with those 3 relief pitchers at the back end of games for the time being, specifically getting the last 6 outs or so. I think you have to rely upon that trio of relief arms because K-Rod should not be in the mix for the last 6 outs of a ball game at this point in his career, and maybe you give him a chance again later in the season to be used in high leverage situations again, but right now you cannot trust upon him to get it done in a high leverage situation. And if you truly intend on winning this season, you can't use him in a high leverage situation. And if Brett Ausmus continually does indeed use him in high leverage situations, then it's totally on Ausmus for the team's mismanagement with pen arms that are lackluster and ineffective, such as Francisco Rodriguez, Doc.
So overall, a lot of people are talking about the bullpen with or without K-Rod. Do you think the bullpen as a unit is okay without K-Rod? Is that the simple fix? Because I don't agree with that. When I look at it, Vito, collectively, I say to myself, this bullpen could be a lot better. And it just goes to show you that everybody that's been trotted up from Toledo has had their struggles. And, you had Bruce Rondon. I read that Joe Jimenez went on the injured list earlier on Tuesday. So you look at it and you go, what are the options? Because you can't pitch Alex Wilson, Justin Wilson damn near every day. You got to rely on Shane Green a little bit more, Blaine Hardy, Kyle Ryan.
Oh, God.
They just haven't done the job.
Piss poor.
So I know they've been pitching better as of late, but that's also due, in fact, to there are some games where the Tigers' offense has given them a lot of runs to work with. So overall, collectively, I'm still not sitting here confident that the Tigers' bullpen can be looked at as a strength, even if you remove Francisco Rodriguez.
They still need him in the mix, but right now in high leverage situations, once again, Francisco Rodriguez cannot truly be relied upon to get it done, to get the outs when that's the case, in a high leverage kind of situation. So you can utilize K-Rod, you should. I mean, he's making enough money to be utilized out of the Tigers' bullpen, and they don't have many great relief options. The depth in their bullpen is very lackluster. Doesn't even come close to comparing to the Indians or even the White Sox in their own division. That is the American League Central. So the Tigers have to still find ways to mix in, Francisco Rodriguez to get him into ball games, but it shouldn't be in tight, highly contested ball games at this point right now. You gotta kind of ease him back into the mix, and hopefully by midway through this season, he's much more effective in those situations late in ball games when they are labeled as high leverage situations. And how many times now have I used that phrase already in this one podcast, Doc? High leverage situations, and K-Rod not being truly at this point in his career a high leverage relief pitcher. Justin Wilson and Alex Wilson are, and maybe now, to be hopefully optimistic as a Tigers fan, hopefully Shane Green can prove to be more of that effective reliever, as he's kind of been more and more of late, that effective relief pitcher. If he continues going down that route where he is an effective relief arm, well, then you got to consider using him as well in these higher leverage situations, because who else do you have outside of Jay Wills and A. Wills, Alex Wilson and Justin Wilson? Not many other reliable options. And now, as you said, Joe Jimenez on the disabled list with a lower back strain, I believe it is. So you got a nice young arm like that on the DL, a guy that isn't ready. He's shown that when he was used at the big league level. He showed that this season. He's not good enough to get it done yet in high leverage situations. So you got to start thinking, well, after Alex Wilson and Justin Wilson, you need a guy like Shane Green to step it up. Or maybe Bruce Rondon miraculously figures it out and gets it back together. That has to be a hope as well. Somebody else, finding that third relief arm that can get it done in those high leverage kind of situations, Doc.
So are you saying that you do have a little bit more confidence than I do? Because when I look at it, I just am befuddled that it has gotten to this point with the bullpen. Because look what happened. You had a series versus Oakland, and you saw what they were doing. Oakland's not that good of a baseball team. They got guys that are playing in the infield that can't field the ball. You see how many errors they had in that series? It looked like the Tigers could have swept them. And you walk away from that series not only not winning all 3 games, you lost the series. And it just goes to show you, too, when you look at some of the managerial decisions of Brad Ausmus. Let's just start with Saturday. Did you not watch what Justin Wilson did in the 8th inning? He was unbelievable. He was in form. Why not just take a stance and for once be a little bit more aggressive and throw Justin Wilson out there one more inning? Then you get K-Rod another day's rest. Maybe then in the game on Sunday, K-Rod goes out there and does the job. But no, you throw him out there. You got to remember too, K-Rod might have been put in a situation where it wasn't his fault. He threw damn near 20 pitches on Saturday. You parade him out there again the next day? I thought that Brad Ausmus made so many mistakes in the Oakland series, and he deserves to be on the hot seat because you now unleashed a fury, because now you unleashed the fury of the fans, and many people are looking at this bullpen going, Alavila's at fault, Ausmus is at fault, the entire situation stinks, and many people are upset. But I can't sit here and say that I can talk positively about the bullpen, and I'm ready now to talk about something else. Because everybody's talked about it now for damn near 72 hours. It's time to play another game. I'm curious to see what's going to happen with Brad Ausmus and what he decides to do going forward with this bullpen, but it needs to be fixed. This is ridiculous that this is still being talked about because there are other storylines we can talk about on this Tigers team besides the nonsense that is this bullpen.
The thing is, too, Oakland, very lackluster coming into that series. 12-16, under 500, that means, which means you're not a good ball club. They weren't going to be a good ball club coming into the season, and not very good at scoring runs. And then you allow them to beat you 2 out of 3, and I don't care that it's the start of a West Coast trip, the first West Coast trip of the season for the Tigers. I don't care about that they had to go on the road and on the West Coast. Because you know what? Against a team like the A's, a lackluster ball club, you have to win 2 out of 3, and they had a chance to at least take 2 out of 3 games. And they didn't. And they scored Saturday and losing, they scored 5 runs still. And Sunday and losing, they scored 6 runs still. That tells you the offense right now is clicking. Maybe not on all cylinders, obviously, but clicking enough to get it done to win ball games and to win a series against a team in the Oakland A's, which perhaps will be at the bottom of the American League West by the end of this season, too.
So how frustrated were you with this last weekend? Were you watching going, what was your reaction when you saw the events that took place? Because everybody was upset, frustrated. Part of me was a little bit happy because we do have on our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, we're selling a Not My Bullpen t-shirt. And obviously, whenever the Tigers bullpen does something, the fans erupt and our Twitter page blows up, and we can also market some of our products on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, which you can check out via our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast.
Did it spike the sales, by the way? I would hope it did over the weekend.
I'm looking at the weekly sales, so I haven't looked yet. I'm kind of just, what I'm doing now is just promoting, seeing how it goes, and then we'll look at the numbers later. Kind of like LeVar Ball and his strategy in terms of selling stuff. You know, we're not charging $495 for our stuff, just $20, baby. Nice and responsible and respectable. But probably, I could say we probably sold thousands and thousands of t-shirts.
Just like he pretended to tell everybody, and rumors spread over the weekend when he sold how many? Like 50 shoes for $4.95 a pop? Good luck selling those and making money off of those, all right? Anyways, about our shirts, our product here with this podcast too, and about the Tigers series against the A's. Another bad thing to take out of it, Doc, is you have to play now after a game off, a day off on Monday. You have to play the Arizona Diamondbacks for 2 games in Arizona, Tuesday and Wednesday night. And the thing is, Zona is playing a very solid brand of baseball right now. Did you know that? Paul Goldschmidt, once again, is the leader of that ball club, leads the ball club in wins above replacement, and their pitching is clicking on all cylinders. And they get the chance, luckily for the Tigers' sake, they get the chance to miss former AL Central foe, a guy that pitched for the Kansas City Royals, won a Cy Young Award with the Royals in 2009. Zach Greinke, that is, who has been great and really has pitched superbly and truly as the ace starting pitcher of the D-backs rotation this season after last year not living up to the billing of being an ace of that D-backs rotation. That was his first year in the desert with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Now they get to miss him, but guess who they face Tuesday night? So the night of this very recording, Doc, a friend of the franchise, a former Tiger at that, in Robbie Ray. How about that? They go up against him, JV against him, Tuesday night, and Robbie Ray, by the way, is pitching very darn well. They probably, right now, would rather have him than Jordan Zimmerman or Anibal Sanchez or guys like that. He'd be a very solid number 5 starting pitcher right now and a big-time upgrade over Jordan Zimmerman. And I think Robbie Ray will be an upgrade over Zimmerman for the duration of this 2017 campaign. And now the Tigers have to face him Tuesday night. So good luck going up against him. A guy that's still a youngster, but very good and in the top 5 in wins above replacement on the D-backs roster up to this point in the season.
You know, Vito, and looking at the Tigers situation, and you look at the roster, you look at what's happening, many people are thinking that this is a good ball club. But collectively, I don't understand when people make arguments where they say, well, this could be a good ball club despite the bullpen. The bullpen is really good without K-Rod. You also have to include it. But the reason why many people are mad, and you can't say this is a good team, the Detroit Tigers are a 500 team. That's how you rate the team. They're a ball club that has strengths. They're a good team in terms of their offense. They're a good team in terms of the fact that, hey, despite the fact that there's been some injuries, they've overcome it. But collectively, when you include a unit that is probably the worst unit of all time, you can't negate that. It's a good team, but with that bullpen collectively, it's going to be the hindrance of the team. That's why you're sitting here at the time of this recording, 15 wins up, 15 wins down. It's unfortunate, but you can't say the Tigers collectively are a good team with a bullpen that can't get outs. You can't say the Tigers are a good team with a unit like the bullpen, and you can't look at a team being good where the manager doesn't consistently make enough moves to help the team win. He doesn't do it enough. The Detroit Tigers record is what it needs to be. That's what they are. Brett Ausmus is around a 500 manager, and he's managing a 500 team. that is the summation of what's going on with this Detroit Tigers team. They are a 500 team with this collection of talent. But when you ask, can they improve it? Do you see them making any moves? Do you see them going out and trading? I've seen articles now kind of reflecting on what Adam and I said a couple weeks back regarding maybe going out and trading JD Martinez for some relief. Maybe you go out there, you got a guy in Aducci, and we should talk about him because he's come out of nowhere and slapped the hell out of the baseball the last week or so. He's come out of nowhere and been a breath of fresh air. We should be featuring a guy like that. We should be talking about a guy that's really kind of helped the Detroit Tigers offense and a breath of fresh air. But no, we're forced to talk about a significant weakness because of how bad they are. But I would like to talk about Jim Aducci, and if you could tell me a little bit where he came from and what he projects to potentially do, because you could also trade him. You know, unfortunately, I know people want to keep him playing every day. You cannot roll out the rest of the season with this collection of talent. You got to make a move. And I read an article, and we'll talk about it in the second half of the podcast, that was really interesting and really insightful, saying, you know what? You have to go all in. And if that includes adding payroll, adding money, you got to do it. And we'll get to that in the second half of the podcast. But overall, my thinking is it's a 500 team. I'm frustrated because the bullpen is worse than we even thought it was.
You know, Ausmus doesn't make enough smart moves to keep his job. He makes enough boneheaded moves to lose his job. And the crazy thing is, he's in his 4th year as skipper of the Tigers ball club. Think about that craziness and that factoid right there that I leave you with as we go to commercial here on Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.
All right, Vito, let's talk about our host site, Podomatic. When we first started this project, one of the things that I needed to know was, how do you take your audio that you record and put it up to the internet? So all I did was go to Google and search uploading audio easily. And one of the first sites that popped up was Podomatic.com. Podomatic is our host site. And through our work with Podomatic, we've been able to put up 500 to 600 podcasts with no trouble at all. Podomatic's user interface is so easy and friendly. I've showed every guy here on the network how to upload podcasts, and they'll tell you. If you ask Vito, if you ask Adam, if you ask Jason or Jerry, they'll tell you within 5 minutes you can put up your podcast to the internet. And so we spend our time having fun, planning. Not too much time is spent on uploading our audio. All we got to do is take the audio, go to Podomatic.com, and boom, our project, our audio is up to the interwebs, and it gets on iTunes, and it gets heard by the masses. And so that's why I'm a strong supporter of Podomatic. It's easy, it's user-friendly, and should you have any problems at all, you just contact them, and boom, they address your concerns right away. The crew over there at Podomatic has been awesome. So since we started this project, we've only had one user site, and that's Podomatic. So listen to the doc. If you want to start a podcast and you want to get your project up and to the internet very quickly, Doc suggests one site, Podomatic.com. All right, welcome back, everyone. Thank you for finding the various podcasts on our platform. We greatly appreciate it. You're listening to the Tigers Talk podcast. What episode are we on, Vito?
Episode 90, officially, Doc.
No doubt about it. So, like I said prior to the break, on CBS Detroit, a great writer, Will Birchfield from The Ticket, I think summed it up pretty good. And he said why and where the Tigers should seek outside help at closer. And the thesis was, in essence, that this is probably, and he's very correct, this is obviously going to be one of the last go-rounds with the Detroit Tigers because of the payroll, due to the fact that in a year or two, a lot of the contracts are going to be off the books. You know that Anibal Sanchez probably won't be here. Victor Martinez won't be part of the ball club. So you go and you say that this is the last run, the last hoorah, and it's a decision that has to be made by upper management. But if this is the last hoorah, this is the last go-around, you make moves. You try and go all in and say, hey, if this is it, if this is the last opportunity to be a winning ball club, this team probably is not World Series caliber in 2 years from now with this collection of talent. So you go all in this year. You push the chips to the center of the table. You make a couple moves. You let go of JD Martinez. You maybe let go of one of your prospects, no more, and then you add a couple pieces to this bullpen. You need maybe 2 more guys. So if you can trade JD Martinez to any other organization for maybe an everyday bullpen reliever and a minor league prospect, and maybe you trade the likes of a Jim Aducci, then you say, hey, this is a guy that, you strike lightning in a bottle and you sell at the highest point.
Jim Adducey would not be dealt for anything of high quality.
Nothing?
He's a career journeyman that played overseas, and for a good reason, because he's not really good enough to cut the mustard seed. Now, he has been so
Not even
far
a prospect?
lightning in a bottle, right, that the Tigers have caught, or whatever, however you want to describe it. No, not worthy of getting a high-caliber Major League-ready player and player for the bullpen, which they need. They need to upgrade that. Thing is, wouldn't they have gone all in the offseason to upgrade the bullpen when they didn't do so? They didn't sign anybody, even a Boone Logan-esque relief pitcher. A left-hander, a lefty specialist. Why not go out and do that this past offseason? Guess what? Al Avila and the front office of the Tigers decided not to do so. So what gives you the mindset right now, Doc, and to others that have this mindset, that the Tigers are going all in and will deal anybody to upgrade the bullpen at this point? I don't think they will. Now, Joe Jimenez, yeah. But the thing is, people keep talking about prying away Kelvin Herrera, right, from the KC Royals. Thing is, it's in the division. Do you know how many trades happen within a division, between teams in a division? Guess what? Not very many trades happen like that, Doc. And Joe Jimenez, I don't think, will be enough to pry away Kelvin Herrera from a team within the Tigers' same division, the American League Central. Now, if it was with a team from another division in the American League or from a team in the National League, maybe you have a better shot of just dealing Joe Jimenez a package centered around him to get Kelvin Herrera. But Herrera's on the KC Royals, a team that we've gone up against. We go up against, 18 times a year about. So within the division, it's not very likely a trade like that will happen. Now, if you give up Matt Manning, their top starting pitching prospect, maybe you're able to pry away Herrera. But the thing is, are you going to really give up Matt Manning? Are you going to give up, get rid of your entire farm, the majority of your farm, in that one trade to get an upgrade at closer for the stretch run of this season? Are the Tigers truly looking in that direction to upgrade the bullpen to that extent where they have to give up Matt Manning? I think Manning is pretty much off limits. And I don't think the Tigers are willing to deal him that means. Now, would that get you Kelvin Herrera in return? I think a package centered around Manning would get you Kelvin Herrera. But the thing is, even that, you can't guarantee it because it's in the Tigers' own division, trading with the Kansas City Royals, Doc. So I would say put your foot on the brake, okay? Because the thing is, right now, the Tigers, I'm not even sure if they're willing to upgrade the bullpen to a high enough extent to really make a stretch run and to win the AL Central, because the Indians, once again, as I've said on numerous podcasts leading up to this very episode, Doc, I've said how the Indians are leaps and bounds above the Tigers in terms of talent. When you look at their roster construction, and their bullpen is leaps and bounds better than the Tigers' bullpen. So even getting that one additional relief pitcher to upgrade the back end of the pen, you're still not going to be better than the Cleveland Indians. So it's still going to take a lot for you to win the World Series. Now, you might get into the playoffs, and anything can happen once you get into the playoffs, but it's no guarantee that if they get Kelvin Herrera or another high-quality, lights-out-esque relief pitcher for the back end of games, that they're going to make it all the way to the World Series and win it all for the first time since 1984.
Man, Vito, you're like a party pooper. I want to make trades. I know I did ask Matthew Mowry on Twitter. I'm like, so let's trade Adducci for Herrera straight up. He's like, I
saw that tweet. He said no way pretty much too. Like, where did you get that idea from?
Now, I was half serious, obviously. I know that it's not likely, but, I'm a fan, and so I can throw out these crazy trades, and it's fun. So it's just one of those things where we just want to see improvement, and we want to see action. Okay, so let's preface it and say, okay, maybe they don't go out and get bullpen help. Do you think they make moves at the deadline to improve the squad? Do they buy? Do you think?
Well, it's about where they're at, right? If they're only a 500 ball club and only view themselves as a 500-esque ball club, even if they're a few games over, is that enough to convince the Tigers front office brass to make a move at the deadline to upgrade the ball club that will take giving up the likes of Joe Jimenez and Matt Manning, to give up really their farm system and the top-level talent in their farm system? I don't know if that will prove to the Tigers enough that they should make a deal to upgrade their roster, which needs some upgrading, especially once again in the late innings of games. Thing is, I don't know if they're willing to, and I think it will take a lot to convince the Tigers that this is the season that you go all in and you trade the likes of Jimenez and Manning, no matter what, if you know you're getting a huge upgrade that can help you win now, win in 2017, and make a run all the way to the World Series. So once again, put your foot on the darn brake, Doc, okay? And to all of you Tigers fans out there that think right now that Jim Adduci will get it done by dealing him, you're going to get a high-end closer? You really believe that, Tigers fans and Doc? No, it's not going to happen. So make sure you place your foot on the brake, okay, and do so very aggressively, because the Tigers, I don't see being very aggressive at this year's deadline to upgrade the ball club to win now, even though they're in that win now mode, too, as we've talked about before, Doc.
Okay, man, so it looks like the biggest case scenario, the road that's probably going to be the road that's going to happen is they're going to probably sell and just, I see it.
Or not do anything. Maybe not do anything. They did it last year, remember? They didn't do anything at the deadline. Now, they sold the year before, and guess what they got? I mean, they got some great additions for the ball club that are contributing right now big time on their big league ball club. Michael Fulmer, Matthew Boyd, guys like that. And where would they be without them? So maybe they think of selling. So I would say, okay, I'll give you this much, Doc, and to all you Tigers fans out there. I think selling is more feasible for the Tigers front office brass than dealing Joe Jimenez or Matt Manning to upgrade the bullpen. I think selling is more feasible, but I could see the Tigers once again standing pat. And would that be very appeasing to Tigers fans? And even to me, not that much. But the thing is, the most likely thing I see the Tigers doing is what I just said, Doc, standing pat. But selling would have to be the second place finisher. I see that selling for the Tigers, that happening at the deadline and close to the deadline more than the team going all in and trading these big-time minor league pieces in Joe Jimenez and top starting pitching prospect Matt Manning.
Yeah. See, it's just, as fans, all we want to do is make some kind of move. And I understand they're going to wait and see, but if they stand pat, that would be the worst thing for the organization. They cannot do that. They have to go out there and make some moves and go out there and really try to improve this ball club, because standing pat would be horrible. You have some assets, and you can't just let the assets die out, right? Am I wrong in my thinking? You can't just let Victor Martinez go. You can't.
Has he already died out, though? He might have already died out.
That's why we need him to help out, right? We need him to help out just a little bit, right?
He might already have to be taken out to the pasture, to the farm, and to die out over there, because pretty much has his bat been put to sleep? Now, he's produced, I know, some more extra base hits in the last week or so. Thing is, for him to be effective over the course of a full season, and specifically this season in 2017, how likely is that to be the case? I say in a game of Big Vito's under 50%, that he will be effective for the duration of this season, because I think he's hit the stage in his career where he's no longer that effective run producer game in, game out. And he's already proven that this season up to this point. So, right now, I don't believe he's in the top 12 in terms of wins above replacement on the Tigers roster, in terms of individual players on the Tigers roster that are in the top 12 and wins above replacement, which is commonly referred to as WAR. V-Mart's not in that top 12 right now. Well, I think it's conceivable that V-Mart will not finish in the top 12 on the Tigers roster in wins above replacement by the end of the season. I mean, he's on the downside of his career. There's no doubt about it. Now, other guys will improve their productivity, I think. Miguel Cabrera could even get better, and I think he will. JV definitely will. Nicholas Castellanos will hit around what he has so far, maybe even get a few more hits than he has, because those hard contact outs that he's made throughout the course of the season so far might end up turning into hits more and more as the season does progress. So some of these guys are due for a turn-up in production. Thing is, I don't see V-Mart being due for an uptick in production. I see him staying close to where he has produced so far this season. And does that mean the Tigers, definitely miss out on the postseason because of that? I don't know. I wouldn't say so, because you're getting JD Martinez back, and Miguel Cabrera probably will hit better. Once again, Castellanos could hit better. McCann might. Upton, if he keeps hitting at the rapid rate that he has in terms of run producing, this Tigers ball club could still make a run and get into the postseason. Now, barely, but they could get in as one of the two American League wildcard teams. So it's not like a drastic thing or going to be a drastic drop-off for the Tigers if V-Mart stinks it up the rest of the way. That's at least my opinion. So the reasons to be optimistic are what I already mentioned. And JD Martinez, when they get him back, I think he's bound to produce. And that's why maybe you sell. You deal JD Martinez at the deadline. If you're only hovering around 500, I think you have to think about dealing JD Martinez. I think you do have to think about that and getting younger as a ball club and getting better for the future. And the Tigers need to look towards that now, getting better for the future, as we've harped on how many times throughout these episodes of Tigers Talk too, Doc.
Do you see that this season, when you look at it now, do you see them really finishing in contention? Do you see them really turning it around with this kind of team? Do you really get a sense that the fans of the Detroit Tigers are willing to continue to invest in this team the way it is? Because I feel like there's a lot of trepidation, and I feel like people are right on the brink of just saying, you know what? I give up. I can't do this anymore because of the fact that they are stuck in purgatory. You can't. You have to have an indication to your fans whether you're going to be moving forward with acquiring minor league talent, which they have done nothing to indicate to anybody that they can go out and acquire young minor league prospects, or they're not trading off their assets yet. Or are you going to continue to keep saying, let's roll it over for another year. Let's kick the can another year. And Justin Verlander, Jordan Zimmerman, these guys aren't getting any younger. The core of your team, Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez, these guys aren't getting any younger. How long are you going to continue to rely on the likes of Alex Avila, Jose Iglesias, Aducci to continue to get hits and runs for you? You're going to have collectively a team of older veterans that you look at some point, they're going to have to sell. So I'm always of the opinion that to regain confidence, you got to make a splash and you got to make a move. And you can't lose JD Martinez to free agency when he commands a big-time salary if he comes back and produces.
Well, you brought up the reasons to sell. You can't keep counting upon JV, Jordan Zimmerman, V-Mart, Jim Aducey, Jose Iglesias. Well, forget about Aducey, who's a career minor leaguer. He's not going to be around for the long haul on this ball club. And forget about Jordan Zimmerman. Throw him to the wayside. Throw V-Mart to the wayside. And I'm specifically going to reference Jay Zim once again, because when you look at their rotation and what it can be going forward in future seasons, you still have Matthew Boyd and Michael Fulmer and Daniel Norris, youngsters in that big league rotation, making up the core of it going forward. That's a good thing. And I think JV can still anchor the rotation as a veteran ace. So the rotation is a reason to be optimistic for the ball club in future seasons and not to give up on the Tigers in future seasons. Matthew Boyd has now pitched at least 7 innings in his last 2 outings. He's going Wednesday night against the D-backs. I think they very well can win that game in a mini preview here of now that series against the D-backs in Arizona. I see them taking 1 out of 2, dropping the first game the night of this recording, winning Wednesday with Boyd on the mound, who's pitched very well of late. Norris has shown he's very capable of pitching well as well. And JV, we know what he can do. We know what Michael Fulmer can do. Those 2 guys are very big-time gamers. And Norris even is as well. I see him rebounding as well and getting better and better, and maybe even once again supplanting Michael Fulmer as his second best starting pitcher in the Tigers' rotation. If that happens, you got a very solid 1 through 3. From JV to Norris to Fulmer. God, I mean, Fulmer won the American League Rookie of the Year last year and was great. Look at his numbers. And his numbers thus far this year have been very solid. So, in the overall or grand scheme of things, I think you have to say that the rotation, their starting 5 outside of Jordan Zimmerman, is a reason to be optimistic about this Tigers ball club going into future seasons. Their bullpen is not, and guys like Victor Martinez and Jose Iglesias are not. But the rotation makes up a large majority of a team's ability to be successful. So if the rotation is successful, the team as a whole has a good shot of being successful. And that's why I think you have to be optimistic about their odds, the Tigers, that is, in future seasons. So the sky isn't completely falling on the Tigers and their faces. The Tigers, I think, despite what may happen this year, and despite what might result in a non-playoff appearance for the Tigers, once again, I think there's still reason for the Tigers and the franchise as a whole and the fan base to be optimistic about what the Tigers will produce for next season and beyond.
Okay, Vito, let's look to this week. The Tigers are going to look to rebound from that awful series versus the Oakland A's. Vito, you penned a great piece on the Detroit Free Press, the Free Press website, regarding the Detroit Tigers matchup versus Arizona. Tell me a little bit about that. I know there's going to be a matchup with a familiar face.
There will be, and I talked about it if you were listening. I hope my co-host does listen. I know you listeners, you do. We've got to teach our co-host here to listen. But I did actually already refer to Robbie Ray a little bit. They will face him. He's only 25 years old. He's a southpaw. And those guys can stay around in the bigs for a long, long time, even as they advance in their careers, because they can become lefty specialists. Tigers might be regretting that they traded him at this point, huh? Robbie Ray and what he's become. Looking at Jordan Zimmerman at the back end of the rotation, as I harped upon already in this very podcast, I said, well, when you compare Ray's numbers to Zimmerman's, who would you rather have at this point? And who's younger and making a lot less money? So, well, guess who that is? It's Robbie Ray. Much more cost effective. He's going Tuesday night. You are right, taking the bump against Justin Verlander, a guy who hasn't looked extremely like the JV of last season up to this point. I see him still turning it around. I think he's still good enough at this point in his career to turn it around. I mean, after last year and what he did, should have won the Cy Young. I mean, how many times have we said that, you and I, on this podcast, Doc? But I see that D-backs getting the best of the Tigers Tuesday night. So the Tigers continuing their losing ways and ending up in a 3-game losing streak. How bad would that be? after blowing those games over the weekend against the Oakland Athletics. And then Wednesday, Matthew Boyd takes the hill for the Tigers. I see him pitching at least 7 innings once again. And now, throughout the entirety of this 2-game set, only 2 games in Arizona, it will be tough, very tough to get out Paul Goldschmidt. He is a 4-time All-Star, also a 2-time Silver Slugger winner, from my knowledge. This guy, Paul Goldschmidt, is a guy leading the team in pretty much every offensive category. When you look at batting average, runs batted in, OPS, and then he's also tied for the team lead in home runs with third baseman Jake Lamb. So Goldschmidt, Goldie, as they often call him there in Arizona, he can do it all for the D-backs. So he will be a tough out to get for JV and Boyd and for the entirety of the Tigers pitching staff in this 2-game set. Just hopefully they get him out often enough to win 1 out of 2. And that's what I see the Tigers doing, taking 1 out of 2 against the D-backs in this 2-game set Tuesday and Wednesday in Arizona.
Justin Verlander on the mound has got to do the job. And I guess the final topic, I think that many people are starting to look at it, and I know it's early. I know people that are in the know are like, patience, patience, patience. Preach it. They preach it nonstop. But any concern at all regarding the up and down nature of how Daniel Norris has been pitching at the start of the year, 6 weeks in? Many people are looking at it and going, when he's on, it's got good stuff. Gets guys out. Has command. Has a good fastball, an above average fastball. But the problem is, though, when he's off, struggles with command, looks like a guy that we sometimes go, whoa, what is this guy really about? But it is early in his pitching career, but any concern at all? What do you see about Daniel Norris in terms of his contributions to the Tigers?
The Axeman you're talking about now? Yeah. I think he's got such good stuff, Doc, and everybody else listening, that he'll be all right. I really believe that he'll be all right. The thing I'm more worried about with Daniel Norris is the injury bug getting the best of him. He has to stay healthy. If he finds a way to stay healthy, I think his arm will produce enough to be a very sufficient number 3, even potentially number 2, meaning frontline starting arm for the Tigers in future seasons. So for me, I am not that concerned with Norris's results of late. It's more about his health, him staying healthy. If he can sustain some healthy ways, Daniel Norris will be all right the rest of the season, in my opinion, Doc.
Okay, Vito, no concern. That's what a lot of young professionals that are calm, cool, and collected, they're like, no, don't worry. Just chill. Well, we've been chilling for damn near 15 years on these Detroit Tigers, and we're still waiting for them to turn it around and get that ring, baby. So, listen, don't judge me for being such up and down, because I'm watching these guys, and I say to myself, okay, I want to see qualities like Michael Fulmer, but he's been a little bit inconsistent. But many people, and I think in future episodes of the podcast, I think we'll dive into it, many people, including the analysts, reporters, even Major League Baseball national media, are looking at the core of the Tigers pitching with Michael Fulmer, Daniel Norris, and Matthew Boyd, and they're going, you know what? This young crew of guys can be up here for a long period of time doing a lot of things. So this is going to be the core. And I'm starting to ask myself, do I trust them? I like what I'm seeing. I like the stuff that they feature, but can they develop? And I know it takes patience, but I want to see growth in this 2017 season, because they're on the team now and they can contribute. But at the same time, I think that they have the ability to do some things if they take the next step.
And you know what? What makes Norris and Boyd even more appeasing is that they're left-handed. That's what makes you sexy. As a big league arm, reliever or starting arm, and a starting arm that's a left-hander that can throw hard, even a relief pitcher like Justin Wilson, you are sexy, a sexy man when you can throw hard and you're left-handed. So, guys like Norris and Justin Wilson in the bullpen, even Matthew Boyd as a lefty, it makes him much more attractive than a righty would who throws like Matthew Boyd. And Boyd has been better than Norris of late. So watch out for the Tigers' rotation in future seasons. I think it will be more than fine to produce successful results for this ball club. And I think to get the ball club over the hump when it is enduring some tough times, as it is right now.
All right, Vito, let's wrap this bad boy up. Anything that we should pay attention to the rest of the way this week in regards to the Detroit Tigers?
Well, I think also one thing you have to watch out for is how they do against the LA Angels of Anaheim. Over the weekend, a 4-game set in Los Angeles, and Mike Trout has missed some games in recent memory, missed some recent action. Will he be totally effective, totally healthy for the series? That's a big thing to watch out for in this 4-game set, once again in LA over the weekend for the Tigers as they continue their West Coast trip. And they only make one other West Coast trip, by the way, this season, which I think is fairly common for the Tigers and other ball clubs, but it's just a thing to watch out for. How these teams like the Tigers in this West Coast trip do. Will they finish 500 or over 500? Obviously, losing 2 out of 3 to start off their West Coast trip kind of puts you behind the 8 ball, doesn't it? It sets you off it sets you off in the wrong direction to start off a West Coast trip. So now they got to rebound against the D-backs and against the LA Angels of Anaheim. Will they do so? I think the D-backs will be tougher than people think. They could very well lose both games of the 2-game set against the D-backs. Now, against the Angels, they better at least take 2 out of 4. The Angels still aren't a very good ball club. It could be a series where the Tigers, if their bats are clicking, could take 3 out of 4. And that's all I have for you guys on this episode number 90 of Tigers Talk with Chirco and Company.
Where can the fine people find your work, King Vito?
At Vito Jerome on Twitter. Make sure to do so. And the Detroit Sports Podcast Network, its Twitter handle is at Detroit Podcast. Guys, we're out. Adios.